The ring hit the counter like a coin dropped on a bar. "It's just a formality," she said. "You know that." I didn't say anything. I picked up my coffee mug instead, the one Maddie made in second grade, lopsided handle, glazed the color of a bruise. I drank from it. Still hot. "Daniel." She said my name the way you'd say it to a kid who wasn't listening. "Did you hear me?" "I heard you." She laughed. Not a big laugh. A small, tired one, the kind that isn't about anything funny. "That's it. No fight." "No." She gestured at the space between us, like she was trying to conjure the scene she'd rehearsed. "Nothing." 3 days later, her lawyer called. He expected to be first. He wasn't. 9 years married. 11 together, if you count the 2 years before, back when Claire Whitfield used to leave voicemails that made me replay them twice. Back when she'd wait outside my office in December cold just to walk 2 blocks to a diner with me. I tell you I don't know when that ended. But that would be a lie I've told myself for a long time, and I'm done telling it. I'm a structural engineer. I spend my days making sure buildings don't fall down, calculating loads, checking that the thing holding everything up can actually hold everything up. There's an irony in that I couldn't see the load-bearing wall cracking in my own house. I noticed the paint chipping. I told myself it was cosmetic. Claire sold real estate. Good at it, better than good. She had a way of walking a stranger through a house and making them feel like they already lived there. She used to practice her listing descriptions on me at the kitchen table, reading them out loud, asking if sun-drenched sounded better than light-filled. I always said sun-drenched. She always used light-filled anyway. Her boss, well, not exactly her boss. Senior broker at the same firm, the guy who'd been there 15 years, who ran the top listings, who Claire had wanted to work under since she got her license. Marcus Doyle. I met him twice at company holiday parties. Firm handshake. Good watch. The kind of guy who remembers your name and uses it too many times in one conversation, like he's testing how it feels in his mouth. I didn't think about him again after those parties. Why would I? It started, if it has a start, if anything like this ever really has one clean starting point, with her phone. Not that I went looking. I want to be honest about that, because everything after this moment, I did go looking. But this first time, in March, it was an accident. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was upstairs in the shower, and a name flashed on the lock screen. Marcus D. A message preview, gone in 4 seconds. Can't stop thinking about. That was it. Cut off. The rest hidden behind the lock. I stood there with a spatula in my hand, eggs going cold in the pan, and I thought, that's probably about a listing. A house. Some new build he can't stop thinking about. Wants her opinion on staging. I believed that for about 6 seconds. Then I didn't believe it at all. And then I made myself believe it again, because believing it was easier than the alternative, and I have spent a lot of my life choosing easier over true. I didn't ask her about it. Not because I didn't want to know. Because I was afraid of the answer, and afraid, too, of what it would mean about me if I'd been wrong about us for months without noticing. April. She started working Sundays. Open houses, she said. It's the market, Daniel. Buyers don't wait for Monday. I nodded. I had my own Sundays full of blueprints and beam calculations for a parking structure downtown, so it wasn't hard to believe her, because I wanted to be somewhere else too, in my own way. 2 people avoiding a house by filling it with everything except each other. Maddie noticed before I let myself notice. She was 7, old enough to catch tone even when she couldn't name it. Mommy's on her phone at dinner again, she told me one night, whispering it like a secret, like she was giving me information I needed. She's working, bug, I said. She smiles different when she's texting than when she's talking to us. I should have written that down. Kids say the truth like it's nothing, because for them, it is nothing, just an observation, not yet an accusation. It took me years to understand that Maddie handed me the whole story in one sentence, and I filed it under cute thing my daughter said instead of evidence. May. The credit card statement. A charge from a hotel in Cedar Rapids, 90 minutes from home. $214. Broker conference, Claire said, before I even asked, which in hindsight should have told me something. She was answering a question I hadn't spoken yet. Half the office went. Boring as hell. I wanted to leave after lunch. I looked it up later. Just the hotel, nothing more. 3-star place off the interstate, conference rooms on the 2nd floor. Plausible. I let it be plausible. Plausible was a life raft, and I was holding on to it with both hands. That was the first time I noticed the tell that would repeat, again and again, for the rest of that spring. When Claire lied, she over-explained. The truth came out clipped. The lies came out generous, detailed, offered before they were requested. I didn't understand the pattern yet. I would. June. Her sister's birthday dinner. Claire came home late, said traffic on the bridge, said she'd texted me, hadn't she? She hadn't. Her lipstick was smudged at the corner, just slightly, like she'd wiped it in a hurry and missed a spot. Her jacket sat crooked on one shoulder, the collar folded wrong, the kind of wrong that happens when you put something on fast in a dark car. I didn't say anything about the lipstick. I said, "You want me to reheat your plate?" She said yes. She ate standing at the counter, scrolling her phone, and laughed once at something on the screen, a short laugh that didn't reach her eyes, gone as fast as it came, like she'd caught herself doing it in front of me and shut it down. I watched her do that and felt something tighten low in my chest, something I couldn't name yet. I told myself it was tiredness. It wasn't tiredness. It was the first cell of certainty, the one that would grow, slow and quiet, until August. That was the pattern of that whole spring and into summer. A wrong detail here, an over-explanation there. A phone flipped face down on the table where it used to sit face up. None of it was proof. All of it was weather, the kind you feel on your skin before you can point to a cloud. I started keeping a small folder on my laptop. Screenshots of the credit card portal. Dates. I told myself it was nothing, that I was building a case against a wife who hadn't done anything, that I'd feel stupid showing this folder to anyone. I kept building it anyway. Some part of me, the part that calculates loads for a living, that knows a structure doesn't fail all at once, that it fails one hairline crack at a time, already understood what the rest of me wasn't ready to say out loud. Looking back now, I know exactly what that folder was. It wasn't suspicion. It was preparation. I was a man quietly reinforcing a foundation he already suspected was cracked, even while telling himself the house was fine. July 14th, 11:52 p.m. That's the timestamp, and I remember it exactly, because I've looked at it more times than I'd like to admit. Claire was asleep, or pretending to be. I'd learn later that she was very good at pretending to be asleep, and her phone lit up on the nightstand between us. Not a message, a tracking notification. She'd left her location sharing on with a girlfriend from college, one of those apps that pings when someone arrives somewhere, and the ping said, "Claire has arrived at 118 Fairhill Lane." I knew that address. Marcus Doyle's listing. A house that had been sitting on the market for 4 months, empty, no offers. The kind of listing an agent visits alone at midnight for absolutely no reason that has anything to do with selling a house. I didn't wake her. I didn't say a word. I lay there in the dark next to a woman I'd built a life with, and I thought, this is the moment. Not the moment I found out. I think some part of me had known since March. This was the moment I stopped being able to explain it away. Something inside me went very quiet after that. Not sad exactly. Not yet. Just still, the way a room goes still right before a storm actually arrives, after all the waiting. I didn't confront her. That's the choice I made, and I want to be honest that it was a choice, not an accident. Some men would have turned the light on right there at midnight and demanded an answer. I am not that man, and there's a version of this story where that's a flaw in me. Conflict avoidant, my therapist would call it later, the man who keeps the peace because war terrifies him more than betrayal does. But there's another version where it was the smartest thing I ever did. Because a person who's caught doesn't just get caught. They get to control the narrative if you give them the chance, the tears, the explanation, the plea for understanding before you've even gathered the facts. I decided, lying in the dark that night, that I was done giving Claire the narrative. I was going to gather my own. I hired a divorce attorney in early August, before Claire knew anything was wrong. Not because I wanted a divorce yet. I hadn't let myself land there, but because I needed to understand, coldly, what Iowa law actually said about infidelity, about assets, about custody. I needed the rules of the game before I decided whether to play it. Her name was Renata Cole, third floor of an office building downtown. A woman who looked at my little folder of screenshots and said, "You've done more of my job than most of my clients do in 6 months. Is it enough? It's a start. You need dates, locations, financial trails, corroboration. Not one hotel receipt. A pattern." She tapped the folder. Juries don't decide this, but judges in negotiations run on patterns. Build the pattern. So I built the pattern. I checked our joint accounts on a schedule, not compulsively, just consistently, Every Sunday night after Maddie was in bed, I noted every out-of-place charge. I noted the days Claire worked, open houses, and cross-referenced them, quietly, against the properties actually listed as open that weekend, a thing I could check, because her brokerage posted listings publicly. 3 times that August, there was no open house scheduled at the address she claimed to be showing. I found a receipt for a hotel spa package, couples package, the itemized bill specified, charged to a card Claire didn't know I could still see, an old joint account she'd forgotten I had access to from before we consolidated banking. $340. Not a broker conference. Not a client dinner. A couples spa day on a Tuesday, while I told our daughter her mother was at a listing appointment. I didn't ask her about any of it. Not once, that whole month. I smiled at dinner. I asked about her day. I let her tell me about clients who didn't exist and showings that weren't scheduled, and every lie she told me went straight into a folder that was no longer small. I didn't ask because I was afraid of the answer. I'd moved past that by August. By August, I already had the answer. What I was afraid of now was giving her a chance to talk her way around it before I was ready. There was one moment that August that almost broke the pattern of my silence, and I think about it more than almost anything else in this whole story. Maddie had a dance recital, a Saturday afternoon, the kind of thing where the auditorium smells like hairspray and everyone's phone is up recording. Claire showed up 11 minutes late, sliding into the seat beside me just as the lights dimmed, and she reached over and took my hand like nothing in our lives was wrong at all. Her palm was warm. She squeezed twice, our old signal, the one we'd had since we were dating, back when 2 squeezes meant I love you in rooms too loud to say it out loud. I squeezed back. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or maybe some part of me that wasn't ready to let go of the woman I married, even while another part of me was quietly building the case to leave her. Maddie found the 2 of us in the crowd during her number and waved. This huge, unguarded wave, the kind only a 7-year-old gives, certain both her parents are exactly where they're supposed to be. I smiled and waved back. Claire did too. I understood, sitting there, that I hadn't been building a marriage for a while now. I'd been maintaining the appearance of one, and telling myself that was the same thing. It wasn't a comfortable thought. It didn't feel like a revelation so much as a debt coming due, one I'd been quietly running up for longer than I wanted to admit. September 3rd. I got the last piece I needed, and I didn't even go looking for it. It came to me, the way the truth in this story always did, sideways, through someone else's mouth. Marcus Doyle's wife called our house. I want to say that again because it still doesn't feel real when I say it out loud. His wife, a woman named Patricia, called our landline. We still had one, for Maddie's sake, an old habit. Looking for Claire. Is this Daniel? Claire's husband. Yes. I think we need to talk. Her voice was flat, controlled, the voice of someone who'd rehearsed this call in her car before dialing it. I found something on Marcus's phone. Your wife's name comes up a lot. She'd found messages. Not just flirtation, logistics. Times, addresses, a language 2 people build when they've been doing something for a while and need to coordinate around other lives. Patricia read me 3 lines over the phone, careful, precise, like she was reading evidence into a record because in some sense, she was. I didn't need her to read more. I already had the pattern. What Patricia gave me was corroboration, an outside voice confirming what I'd built alone in a folder for 2 months. How long? I asked her. Since February. Maybe longer. 7 months. Longer than I'd let myself believe, even in the version of the truth I'd already accepted. I thanked her. She said she was sorry, and I believed her, because her voice had the same flat exhaustion mine probably had by then. 2 people discovering, on the same afternoon, that the life they thought they were building had a second, hidden floor plan running underneath it the whole time. I filed the next week. Not filed for divorce yet. Filed the paperwork with Renata to prepare the petition, quietly, so that when I moved, I'd move once, completely, with everything already in place. Financial disclosures pulled. Custody framework drafted, built around Maddie's school schedule, her therapist's recommendation for stability, my flexible hours against Claire's unpredictable ones. Fault-based grounds documented. Iowa doesn't require fault to divorce, Renata told me, but fault can still matter in how a judge weighs credibility, weighs asset division, weighs the story each side tells about who this marriage actually was. I want to be clear, I never once threw the word affair at Claire during those weeks. I never confronted her with what I knew. I let her keep living inside the story where she was in control, where her double life was still a secret, while I quietly built the frame that would hold when it all came down. That's the part of this I still turn over sometimes. Whether it was patience or something colder. I've decided it doesn't matter anymore which one it was. It worked. September 22nd. A Sunday. 6:40 p.m. Maddie was at her grandmother's for a sleepover. Claire's mother, ironically, the one relative who'd end up believing me completely once this was all over. Claire came home from what she said was an open house, and I remember the exact way she set her keys down on the counter, harder than usual, a little performance in the gesture, like she was announcing something before she said a word. Then she took off her wedding ring and set it down next to the keys. "We need to talk," she said. "I've been thinking about this for a while. I want a divorce." I put down the dish towel I'd been holding. I looked at her, really looked, maybe for the first time in months, and I felt strangely calm. Not because I didn't care, because I already knew everything she was about to try to tell me, and everything she wasn't. "Okay," I said. She blinked. That wasn't the reaction she'd planned for. "Okay. Why do you want a divorce, Claire?" And here's where she made her mistake, the one I think about more than any hotel receipt or midnight ping. She reached for the story she'd clearly rehearsed, the one where she was the tired, unseen wife, and I was the man who'd stopped noticing her. "I felt invisible in this marriage for years, Daniel. You were constantly. You never ask about my day unless it's a formality. I gave up the chance to run my own brokerage because you needed me home more when Maddie was little, and you never once acknowledged that. I've been lonely in this house for a long time." Some of that was true. I want to say that clearly, because this isn't a story where I pretend I did nothing wrong. I had been distant. I had buried myself in work instead of asking harder questions about how she was doing, because asking harder questions meant risking answers I didn't want. That's on me, and it's a lesson I've had to sit with since. But none of it explained Marcus Doyle. None of it explained February through September. None of it explained a couple's spa package on a Tuesday afternoon while our daughter thought her mother was showing a house. "Is there someone else?" I said. Not a question, really. A door I opened for her, to see what she'd do with it. She hesitated. A half-second too long. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I've known about Marcus since March, Claire. I've known about the hotel in Cedar Rapids. I've known about Fairhill Lane at midnight in July. Patricia called me last week." I watched her face do something I'd never seen it do before. The practiced calm cracking all at once, like a windshield taking a rocket speed, the fracture spreading out from one point in every direction. She started. "You don't have to explain it to me," I said. "I'm not asking you to. I already know." She picked the ring back up off the counter, turned it over once in her fingers, and something in her face hardened back into place, fast, like she'd decided panic wasn't a posture she could afford. "Fine," she said. "Then you know why I want this to be simple. It's just a formality at this point, Daniel. We both know how this ends." She said it like a closing argument, like she still believed she was the one in control of the room. "I hired a lawyer in August," I said. "The petition's already drafted. It'll be filed by Wednesday." That was the moment her face actually changed. Not anger yet. Something closer to the floor moving under her. I didn't raise my voice once during that conversation, and I think that unsettled her more than shouting would have. She'd built a version of this scene in her head where I fell apart, where she got to be composed while I begged or wept or reached for her, giving her the moral high ground of leaving a man who couldn't function without her. Instead, she got a man who'd already grieved the marriage in private, over 6 months, one Sunday night bank statement at a time, and had nothing left to perform. "You knew," she said. "This whole time. You knew and you said nothing." "I know. Why would you do that? Why would you just watch me?" I thought about that question for a second before I answered, because it deserved an honest answer, not a cruel one. Because the first time I asked you a real question, back in March, some part of me already knew I wouldn't survive the answer if I heard it too early. So I waited until I could hear it and still be standing. She didn't have anything to say to that. For the first time since I'd known her, Claire Whitfield Cole didn't have a next line ready. 3 days later, her lawyer called mine. I know this because Renata called me right after, something close to amusement in her voice. "They opened with an offer to keep things civil," Renata said. "Their attorney implied you'd probably want a quick, quiet settlement given," his words, "the emotional toll of separation." I informed him we'd already filed, that we had documented evidence of adultery going back to February, financial records of marital funds spent on the affair, and a custody proposal built around 6 months of Claire's undocumented absences from the home during her daughter's evenings and weekends. What did he say? There was a very long pause, Renata said. Then he asked if he could call me back. He didn't call back that day. He called back 2 days later, considerably less confident, asking about mediation instead of litigation. Here's the part where the story does what the wife's side never gets to do quietly on its own. It delivers the consequences, plainly, on the page, because that's the only honest way to end something like this. Claire lost the house. Not immediately, and not without a fight, but the evidence of marital funds diverted toward the affair, the hotels, the spa package, a handful of gifts Marcus had bought her that showed up, eventually, on his own credit statements once Patricia subpoenaed them for her own divorce, shifted the asset division hard in my favor. She kept her car and half the retirement accounts. She did not keep the house Maddie grew up in. She lost her footing at the brokerage. Marcus Doyle was a senior partner. When his own marriage blew apart publicly, Patricia filed within a month of that phone call, and small-town real estate gossip does not stay contained. The firm quietly eased Marcus out over the following year, worried about the optics of two agents' divorces tangled together in front of clients who trusted the firm with the biggest purchase of their lives. Claire, junior to him, absorbed more of the reputational fallout. Referrals dried up. Two longtime clients specifically requested a different agent for their listings, citing, in one case directly to Claire's face, that they'd heard some things and didn't want the drama near their sale. She lost Marcus, too, in the end, and not gently. Once his own divorce was final and his settlement came in far smaller than he'd planned, Patricia's attorney was thorough. He told Claire, according to her own sister, that he needed space to rebuild, which turned out to mean a woman from a brokerage 2 towns over, someone with no complicated history attached. He had never intended anything permanent with Claire. He confirmed that by leaving the moment permanence would have cost him something. She lost her mother's easy trust, at least for a long while. Claire's mother had been the one to take Maddie for that Sunday sleepover in September, the same woman who cried on my porch 3 weeks later and told me she was sorry, that she should have seen it. That Claire had always been the daughter who wanted more than what she had and never learned how to sit still inside a good thing. In custody, I got Maddie the majority of the time, on a schedule built around her school and her therapist's advice for stability during the transition, with Claire retaining regular but reduced weekend time. Not because I fought dirty. Because the pattern, the undocumented evenings, the pretend open houses, the months where Maddie noticed her mother's different smile before I ever let myself notice it, spoke clearly enough on its own. Once a judge finally saw the whole shape of it laid out in one place instead of scattered across a year. I didn't gloat through any of it. I never wanted a victory lap. I wanted, mostly, for the quiet, patient version of myself, the one who'd sat on a folder of screenshots for 6 months instead of screaming the moment he found out, to finally get to put the folder down. I think back sometimes to the first red flag, that message on her phone in March, can't stop thinking about, cut off before I could see the rest, and how badly I wanted it to mean nothing. That's the first thing I missed, or rather, refused to see. I had all the information I needed within the first 30 seconds, and I spent 5 more months negotiating with myself instead of with reality. The second flag I missed was smaller and, in some ways, worse. It was Maddie telling me, plainly, in a kid's voice, that her mother smiled different when she was texting. Children don't lie about things like that. They don't have a reason to. I filed it as cute instead of critical, and that's a mistake I think about more than almost anything else, because it means my own daughter understood the truth of our house before I let myself. The turning point wasn't the Fairhill Lane ping in July, though that's the one I remember with the most physical clarity. The phone light in the dark, Claire's slow breathing beside me, pretending to sleep or actually asleep. I still don't know which. The real turning point was quieter than that. It was the decision, made in the stillness right after, to stop asking questions I was afraid of and start collecting answers instead. That's the moment the story stopped being about my marriage and started being about my own composure. Whether I could build something solid enough to stand on before the whole structure came down around me. What's hardest to sit with about this story isn't the affair. It's how long 2 people can perform a marriage for an audience of exactly 1 child, each of them privately certain the other has already stopped believing in it. Claire built a second life on the theory that she'd become invisible in her own house. I built a folder of evidence on the theory that silence was strength instead of what it actually was, which was fear wearing a very patient disguise. Neither of us was honest with the other for the better part of a year. We just failed at honesty in different directions. She outward, towards someone else's attention, me inward, toward a spreadsheet only I could see. The accumulation is what did the real damage, more than any single betrayal. It wasn't the hotel in Cedar Rapids or the ping from Fairhill Lane that broke this marriage. It was March through September, 7 unbroken months where two people kept choosing the version of the truth that cost them the least in the moment, and calling that choice love, or peace, or patience, depending on which of us was making it. By the time either of us said something honest out loud, the marriage had already been over for longer than either of us had admitted, even to ourselves. What this cost Claire in the end wasn't really the house or the client referrals or even Marcus, who was always going to leave the moment staying required something of him. What it cost her was the version of herself she might have become if she'd said, back in February, "I feel invisible, and I don't know what to do with that." Instead of finding someone who made her feel seen for exactly as long as it was convenient for him. Self-deception is rarely a single lie. It's a policy, renewed daily, until the interest owed is more than either person can pay. I don't know if I would have found the same clarity without the silence. I don't recommend the silence to anyone else who finds themselves in it. But I understand now that the version of me who lay awake that July night, calm and still instead of furious, was already deciding something true about himself, that he would rather know the whole shape of a thing before he reacted to any piece of it. That's not a strategy I'd teach anyone. It's just the only shape my fear was willing to take. Which leaves the question I still don't have a clean answer to, whether the marriage actually ended in September when she set the ring on the counter, or 7 months earlier, the first time either of us chose a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth and never told the other one it had happened.